Hi, welcome. My name is Ted Thomas. I'm the Director for the Department of Command and Leadership at Command General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. I'm sort of the chair, but I'm not really the chair. I'm really kind of one of the five in the chair, so I'm just going to be the one to get us started off. We're going to basically introduce ourselves. We each have 3 minutes. I'll take about 15 minutes. And then we're going to break apart into 5 different groups, and we'll talk about those groups. Jan will talk about them. Really, the brainchild for this community on ethics is Jan's, and she's kind of the guiding light, the force behind this. But she'll introduce herself in a minute. My interest in this is that I teach ethics to every mid-level manager in the Army. And so every single one of them goes through our course. I'm one of 5 departments, and mine is leadership, and it's the leadership department that teaches ethics. And so I'm very concerned because in our world today, it's key for our soldiers and officers to be ethical. As one of our generals, I think it was General Petraeus, coined it, the strategic corporal can change things in an instant. And so we all need to work from a solid foundation of ethics. So that's my concern, is because I'm the one that kind of is the proponent for that in my organization. I think maybe we'll start with Tom and then work our way back across to Nadine.
Sure, happy to do that. I'm Tom Seacrest. I'm the Associate Dean of the Business School and Director of the Master's Program in Leadership and Ethics at St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. And how many people here were in Prague for the initial part of our conversation? We started this conversation in Prague, and as of this conference, we're a learning community now. And so part of what we want to do is to see how we take this learning community forward. And my interest has been how do we initiate and sustain conversations about ethics in organizations? Because often in organizational meetings, if you're always the person going, I wonder if that's ethical, I wonder if that's ethical, you get uninvited to subsequent meetings. And so how do we talk about ethics in everyday life is what the interest is that I brought to our group and to our discussion, and that I want to continue to bring to the learning community.
I'm Jan Byers. I'm a businesswoman. I work in leadership development. I'm also the leadership development chair, and we're the ones that kind of worked on creating this living community. We'll talk about a little bit more of history and how we got that done. My background and training is clinical, so I'm required to go to the So I have that sort of very formal, probably kind of like Ted, check in, am I ethical, in a mental health perspective. So I would like to see, or my intent for being part of this and helping create it is, how do we take everybody one step closer to a higher level of ethical behavior? Not like change the world in the sense that we all have to be completely different people, but how do we each take a step forward in our ethical behavior and the people that we lead, so that that in itself will be a transformation. So that's kind of my focus on it.
Hi, my name is Kabir Nisana. I am a Solomon Islander. Right now I'm working in Wellington. So much of my work is across the Pacific region. And because it's mostly small island countries, it's easy to find yourself working with multiple communities, different levels of groupings of people. My particular interest is really the frustrations I experience when cultures, much of formal organizational life is imported into Pacific Island countries. And so consequently, they have different cultural principles that are being emphasized, different manifestations of those principles. Whether it's a graduate indigenous student doing research work at the university and having to go through the whole ethics enterprise of the institution, or whether it's a whole government, a group of politicians making a call and international media or diplomatic call rubbishing their actions or their policies as unethical, or whether it's international organizations in development, in international development, coming up with a policy or with some kind of declaration or whatever. For instance, I've been involved in the UNESCO, what was supposed to have been a proposed UNESCO Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, and how it was so frustrating for those of us who understand the basis for ethics from a we perspective, as opposed to those who say, no, it's the I that is important, the person, the individual, and how, in terms of the whole process, UNESCO India basically demonized the we and highlighted and went with the I. And so, in a way, where societal cultures meet, we have not really advanced ethically, but we have demonstrated considerable ignorance and consequently the need for ILA not to continue to entertain the ignorance that's displayed in all the undertakings at different levels. So that's basically my interest, and I would hope that this might be an opportunity for us, some of you, to explore that.
Hello everybody. I'm Nadine Spencer and I'm from the University of the West Indies, Kingston, Jamaica. And my interest in ethics started with the question of would you see ethics as being culturally defined? In other words, as some people, as some cultures more prone to be ethical than others. That's where it began. And they're having tried to, I still haven't found the answer to that one. I'm still thinking about it. And I think that's it. I was the one who threw the culture and the, where's the universality in ethics in the discussion. Now I'm trying to figure out, can you teach it or can it be learned? So from the perspective of somebody who works in a university or who deals with students in a more developmental context, how do you teach or how do you get people to learn what constitutes ethical behavior? And if you are from a space where the interpretation of my country and politics and leadership is one where leadership is in one area and ethics is somewhere else, it's trying to get the two to be seen as necessarily joined at the hip. So that's my question, my area of interest in this discussion.
So I want to just give a brief history of where we come from and how we got here. I was elected chair-elect last year, so my first phone call in March was what are our strategic initiatives, your orientation, jump in and help. And ethics was one of the things on the list. And as I mentioned, I have a background in that, so I thought, all right, I can do something with that. Let's figure it out. So I put a proposal together, and Tom actually had a proposal, and we pulled him in, we pulled Nadine in, and let's have a panel, let's start a discussion. We want an actual structure within this organization where we can start to hold regular conversations and even hopefully create regular work groups and projects and opportunities for growth. And we packed the room and filled it in Prague and had like so many ideas that we were just like swimming. And then we realized, okay, we want it, but we don't have a structure yet. So we really spent this whole year. We're now a legal, real learning community within this organization. So we have structure, we have ILA space, we have a place to start taking those ideas and now starting creating groups to work around them. And that's what our intent today is. We're going to kind of stay with the frameworks that we mentioned here. We'll each host a group and talk with you. You can pick a group and we'll have interesting discussions and hopefully figure out what are hot topics. What do we need to face in these areas? What will be interesting? And then what can we do? Anything on any of those and create opportunities for that. What we decided was that Tom and I will co-chair initially just because we're in it and started it. And my hope, and I haven't talked to ILA about this yet, is to have elections next year. And then there'll be a chair-elect and kind of go through a similar process like the mix. But again, that's not been approved. I don't see why it would be a problem, but it's admin stuff and things like that that will still need to be done. Tom is going to talk about ILA space.
Oh, okay. How many people are on ILA space? They're showing here. Do you know how to get to ILA space?
What is ILA?
Good question, and this came up in Prague too. So one of the benefits of your membership in the International Leadership Association is to become part of ILA space, which is kind of an online community with lots of different discussion forums that are going on there. And the ethics discussion forum is already located there. So if you go to the main ILA webpage, ila-net.org, along the navigation bar in the middle of or at the top of the page, there is one that says Communities. And if you click on that, it's a drop-down menu, takes you to ILA Space Member Community. And you need to register separately for ILA Space. So it's a little bit of a cumbersome process, which frustrates some people, but it works. And if you go there, we've already got several really active discussions going on. But it's active because we've been kind of, doing things with each other. We want to bring everybody else in because there's so many exciting and interesting things that are going on. And so ILA Space, for the time being, and hopefully as we move into the future, that's the platform that ILA has chosen for these online member communities. Relatively easy and straightforward to get there, but we're finding a lot of people really don't know about it. So we're going to use that as the platform for this learning community. And there are already some things on there that I think you'll find interesting. And so go to the main page, go to the communities, go to ILA Space, sign up, and then you'll see the ethics discussion forum over in the navigation panel on ILA Space.
And I want to just add something to that. I had breakfast with a woman who had posted and then it didn't show up. So she posted and then it wasn't there. So if you have any problems, for some reason you post or whatever, if there's a technical problem and we need to get back to ILA about, what's the deal, you can email Tom or I. I'm on the web page under leadership development, and we'll probably be on the web page with ethics once they get us on there. So if you have any problem, for some reason you think you're doing it and it's not happening, we really want to know because we really need to get whatever the problems are, if there are any left, fixed. Yeah.
Hey, I need your help. I've got that flip chart next to you. Can you take all the pages and flip them over? We're going to break into 5 groups now. So what I want you to do is the other way. Just flip all the other ones over. All of them. All. What we're going to do is we're going to break into 5 groups. All of them. Yeah, all.
That all.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now, I want you to rip off the first 3 pages. You're not done yet. Yeah, rip off the first 3 pages. Make sure that underneath the third one I've got the next group. We're going to break into 5 groups. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to listen to the group because we want you to go where your interest is. So, culture is the first one. And the culture group is going to be up in here in this corner with convenience. So, I want you to bring that back and grab some tape, and you can tape it up on the wall and pass the tape on. The next group is going to be context. And if you can, just throw the tape up here. And tape your stuff up. The next group will be context.
That's an organization.
And organization context. And that's Jan. And Jan will meet right here in the middle.
In the middle, like here?
Like here, the table. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, and then Tom is going to be ethics and technical framework. And Tom is going to meet over there. And I'm going to be organizational leadership ethics. And I will meet back in this corner. If you can get your signs up so everybody can see them, that would be good so they don't expect you to remember everything I'm saying. And then last, Nadine is going to be higher education and student ethics. And she will be back in that corner back there. So So,
It's the actual flip chart, and I'll put that on.
yeah, the last one,
It's
no,
okay.
no, there's one more to go. So after this, then I want you to just kind of move to where you're interested, and then we'll have a discussion for about 30 minutes on that area, and then we'll meet back together as a group. So go ahead and pick where you want to go. And move your chairs accordingly. Okay, it's time to kind of get this thing back on track. I know we had some good discussions, but I think we're going to continue moving forward. What I'd like to do is kind of go around the room and have each one of you brief some of the things that you talked about. And then when we're all said and done, I think I'm going to try to look at a way forward and summarize what we're doing. So with that, let me open it up to your group, Ethics National Framework.
Okay. I'll start. We had some great ideas, but because I didn't ask until the very end if somebody else would report them out, I got So there's some interesting things that we believe this learning community can be used for, related to several issues around the kind of the common theme of ethics and ethical framework. Is looking at the distinction between what a manager is and what a leader is, and how ethics impact leaders differently than they do managers. What is ethics? Is another one that might be an interesting thought. That there's not necessarily a uniform definition of what that is. Bringing in follower ethics. There was a paper done a little bit earlier today on follower ethics. How people develop an internal compass and how people have got to act. It's not just the developing the internal compass, but acting on it. And posing questions about ethics. That's kind of how we originally envisioned what would happen here too, is just posing questions. So some different things we could use this for. Clearly there's an idea of identifying potential collaborators. There's a lot of people all over the world who are working solo, or working in small groups, who would like to have the benefit of other people working with them, collaborating with them, researching with them, sharing resources with them. And so that's one of the ways that this space could be used. The idea that we put some FAQs in there was something that I thought was interesting and helpful too. Trying to determine what people are interested in related to ethics. We've got a nice group here, but ILA is a much bigger place, and so providing a space where people can talk about that. Links to research that are being done on ethics. A lot of stuff's being done all over the world, and we don't necessarily know about it. And so using this space as a place to put links to research and links to resources that are available from multiple sources. And related to that was the idea Allison brought up that there are lots of other organizations that are doing work in the ethics arena. And we can bank what they're doing, put links to those other organizations that have websites and resources that are available too. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but people may know about something that somebody else doesn't know about. It's a way to pull all of those into the space. Some specific interest in resources for non-English speakers. This may cross over even to the cultural area, but the idea that things could be posted on ILA space for those for whom English is not their primary language. To use this to benchmark, to collaborate, to provide stories, and again, one of the suggestions was interviewing business leaders to talk about their success stories or about their failures and redemptions, and putting the interviews so it can actually be an active space that people could use to do these kinds of things, and then to share case studies. Just some of the examples that we might be able to use for this. And I think already you'll see if you go on there that there's some interesting stuff that's available. One of the things that was posted just last week was the experiment by Honest Tea here in Boston, where they've got racks of tea that are out on the sidewalk in a plastic box, and people are supposed to go up and take a bottle of tea and pay $1 for the tea. And so they're secretly videoing this experiment to see how many people just take the tea and don't pay for it, and how many people actually pay for it and put the $1 in the box. And when the box got kind of full of money, how many people didn't walk away with the money that's in there? And just to kind of close, 93% of the people in Boston paid for their tea. Okay, so Honest Tea. That's posted on there too. It's a neat little video that people might want to use for a springboard in their classes too. So several ideas that we can use in this way. And thank you for your great ideas this morning.
It's good in Boston, but not in LA.
Neil, why don't you go next?
Yeah, we talked about a whole bunch of different stuff. You can read all the stuff that we actually talked about, but kind of grouped into discussions of what is ethics. It's multicultural, multi-temporal, lots of different factors affect what culture is, how you implement it, how you define it, a whole bunch of different things. So we talked about that. We talked a little bit about not only at the individual level, but at the organizational level, what is organizational culture? How does the culture of an organization to make a profit affect your ethical decisions? We talked about not only you could have a completely ethical group of people operating an organization that is perfectly ethical, but what they do as an organization is unethical. And so we have to look at what is the mission of an organization, as well as just the people involved within the organization itself. It was looked at individually. A bunch of different things go into the ethics. It takes moral courage, it takes introspection. It's not only a mental issue, but it's a heart issue. Ethics has lots of facets to it. How do we get that information? Once you define what ethics are, how do you get that into an organization? How do you teach it? How do you make an organization, a culture, accept and begin to operate differently? And then ultimately what we ended up doing is figuring out what are we going to do next as a group. We thought about we need to begin to dialogue more. We're going to do it. We're trying to figure out how to do it, whether it be synchronous or asynchronous. Do we do it online anytime, or do we actually do it in a cohort group so that we can have feedback among each other instantaneously? We also thought about one of the things that we would like to have ultimately is a toolbox for all of us to use as an ethical toolbox, so you can use it to make decisions about what you're doing and is it ethical and how does it affect all. For me, part of all of this was just so many moving parts to all of this. Organization, individually, it's a heart, it's a mind thing. It's a time thing, it's different cultures, different organizations. It's just so many moving parts. How do we get all of this organized and make sense of it? And that's part of what we're going to try and do with where we're going next is we're going to kind of look at, we focus on about 3 or 4 different things. We're going to focus on developing in the organization ethics. How does it, and essentially how do you make it work within an organization? It's complex, it's very complicated and complex. We're going to look at the organizational culture and the climate of ethics. We're also going to, as Erica talked about, look at the mission of the organization to make sure that we're going to talk about that. How does the organizational mission affect the ethics of the organization? And I don't know what this one was, culture versus rationale. I remember.
Eric, I think that was yours.
Eric, is that yours or you? I don't know why I'm not sure why we didn't think about because we thought they were related. Oh, okay. So from here on out, where we're going to go is we're going to try and among ourselves begin a dialogue to begin to flesh some of these out and perhaps have a paper ready for next year in London. Is that correct?
Okay. So we're looking at higher education students and development. So one of the first things we thought of was we thought we could continue in a space is looking at courses that are being taught now in universities across the world, which have an ethics component or are ethics based, whether leadership or ethics standards. What is the design of those courses? And could we share them on ILA space and then look at the contents and see how we can learn from each other? And then looking also at the outcomes, why are we teaching ethics and so on? And one of the questions we came up with while we were discussing it is, when an institution teaches ethics, how then does that institutional philosophy, the lived philosophy, become very critical to the survival of the ethics course or its authenticity? And we'll go into that one. And then we talked about ethics not just existing in the curricular space, but how does it become a part of the co-curricular and eventually the extracurricular engagement of students. And we figured that it's not just a curriculum, it shouldn't just exist as a course that you take, because much of the student's examination of him or herself is going to be in those applied spaces. When he becomes a leader or whatever you do with each other on campus, how do we begin to get students to engage ethics from that perspective? And then we thought that a good thing to consider in ILA space would be what models of leadership better support discussions on ethics. So when we examine the area of leadership, theory leadership model, which of those would better continue the discussion? And that's a discussion that would be good, and I think it would really contribute to the continuation of the dialogue. And then we looked at whether leadership ethics was personal or social, part of personal or social responsibility. It's finding your voice, we said. And how do we get people to contribute to that discussion? What is it really? Is it your own decision, or is it an outside calling or an outside motivator that says you need to do? And then we go back to the idea of how institutions articulate what their ethics are and how important that is for them to be taken seriously if it is they do call on students themselves to be ethical. Then we talked about appropriate decision-making models would be influential in getting us all, students and lecturers or people working in higher education generally, to make ethical decisions. How do we arrive at that decision-making model? What would it look like? Would we be able to construct that in ILA space? Is it somewhere that we perhaps here are unaware of, and could we bring that to ILA space and then see what our views are on it? And then the question, are there some universal values, and can we find a space for respecting differences as it relates to leadership and ethics? I think that does about it. Thank you.
Well, Kavini was immediately thinking of the we in our group, so he immediately got the responsibility for doing the presentation summary to one of the others of us. He didn't think about himself. We spend a lot of time pretty much on this side with what are some of the issues that are out there. And kind of an overarching one I want to go back to is that this is the International Leadership Association. And so to be truly international, we understand that we need to take in an international perspective. And so when we talk about ethics, there are some dimensions, and certainly there are more than this is what we came up with, but there certainly are others. And the we-I kind of approach, the individualism versus collective society, that's huge. I used the term the illusion of separateness, and since ILA is North American based pretty much, in fact of membership in the U.S., and I know ILA has made effort after effort to reach out around the world, but that effort needs to continue, and the dimensions also have to do with understanding some of the cultural variance in ethics as we're talking about. Another point that kind of drove that home is there even the word ethics in other languages? So in Chinese, what would be the translation? Well, good life. Over here, we just emphasize decision-making. Decision-making is certainly judgment, right and wrong, but there's also what's a life worth living, which is a little variant. So it's a broader topic. And so that's good life, ethics. What do we really mean by ethics? And then Western, is it really limited? If so, how? Are there universals? Looking at that. Also, sometimes it seems like in the classes, in other arenas, there's talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Where do we get to the behavior? Demonizing ethical beliefs. And I put good life again here. Kavini told a great story, which is one of our solutions, I think, stories and narratives, about contentment being the highest or a very high value in his society, and people, I'll say, charitably misunderstanding that and saying that was wrong. And so understanding values and not jumping to those kinds of conclusions. And I'll get over that in a minute. So to make it truly international, these are some issues that we identified that when you get out and move into the world, when we talk about ethics, maybe we have different approaches. And so to be truly international, maybe if we look at the membership, and if some of these things are new to us or we don't understand them, maybe we need to have more presentations and talk more about what these distinctions really are. I don't know if I'm saying the term correctly, but the African term Ubuntu, that we don't understand. I can't make any, there's no sense of us as an individual except within the context of the we, which is, it's more than just myself and others when we talk about the we. So how do you understand these? So over here, I didn't want to jump down here, this Taboo. And Kavini did a presentation last year, and he could explain this far better, obviously. But he said, Cook mistranslated this. Really, it has to do with holiness. And if you take that out of leadership, and the way we think about Taboo, you take that out of leadership, and I said something about removing leadership is ripping out the spine of it. So I mean, you just completely destroy other concepts of leadership if you don't understand the way in which language and concepts are being used. So, what are the solutions? Stories and narratives, some of which I very quickly related that came from this group. Continue to recruit from around the world. Maybe the conference locations. We made the brave step to move to Europe, but maybe I know there are pragmatic issues about being in Asia or in other parts of the world, but that needs to be considered. Certainly the presentations, even organization, are we able to address these kinds of cultural issues? And then kind of went up around here, commitment again to what it means to be international, dissemination of the information, back to ILA space, having these kinds of conversations, hosting those things, and not only sharing them within the learning community, but having those grow into presentations. Keynote speakers. Personally, I would love to see somebody who could really address this we-I. I think that's a huge, huge issue.
Do you know that person?
I think we should look for them.
I didn't know you had a...
Not right off. Maybe he's here. I don't know. I'll return the favor since you have me up here doing this. I'll have you keynote. But those kinds of things so that we can understand better what some of these cultural issues are. And let's see. Yeah, I'll end with a story because I think maybe that's, if you don't mind, about your book. Apparently, there's some kind of a rule that the books are out there are displayed. They have to be printed in the U.S. or available in the U.S. And so if it's not, then it can't be in the book there. Maybe that's Barnes & Noble. Maybe it's ILA. I don't know. But regardless, maybe we ought to look at some of those kinds of policies. Just because it isn't available in the U.S. I don't quite get that myself. But anyhow, these are things that block our understanding and prevent us from knowing more and being truly international.
I'm going to kind of wrap things up, and then I'll turn some time over to Jan in case I have anything. I think some of the things that we talked about here is to spread the word, to recruit from around the world, and I think that's what each one of us needs to do is to, because there's a lot of people that are giving talks on ethics that are here, but not here. And I'm using that one, and one-third of them are here, and I told them that they need to be a part of this discussion. So if you know of other people that are interested in ethics, get them on ILA space and get them part of the discussion. So please invite them, spread the word. The next thing is each one of us need to get on ILA space and be a part of the discussion. Just brief history, we had like these groups as a different discussion on ILA space, and Tom and I got tired of talking to each other, and so we went back to one big group. And so what I'd ask each of you to do is make a commitment to go on ILA space once a month. It's not that often, but go on once a month and check the threads of discussions that are going on and make a comment or ask a question. And what that will do is it'll get you to a tipping point to where if enough people are on there, it'll generate more interest. And as the interest grows, it'll pique other people's interest, and you'll get a force where you'll actually have a lot of people discussing. So would you make that commitment once a month? Yay? Good. And just a comment on that is that ethics crosses the MIGs. And so, this is a community. It's not a MIG because there is no member interest group that has the purview only of ethics. So it involves everybody at the conference. And so everybody ought to be involved. Let's see. I think some of the other things I captured was we may want to look at a place where we can have on ILA space, or if there's a better way to do it, a place where we can put stories and narratives. I think that's a good idea. You call them case studies. I think it's the same thing.
We have stories on there too.
Stories, and I think I have stories on ours somewhere over there too. And you do too. So I think that's a common theme. And I think if we have a place where we can put stories, then we can all access those stories. Because if it's an ethical issue in your country, then it really highlights the issue to me of culture and ethics to see if people in my class we'll see if it fits. Plus, if Tom's got a lot of great case studies, I can use them in my class. Because I think these stories and narratives probably are not copyrighted. But please, I think we'll have to look at maybe putting a place on there where we can do that. And on the same note, I think maybe having the facts that you talked about, frequently asked questions on ethics, I think that would be a great thing to put on ILA too. So we'll have to look into
And I like the idea of gathering tools.
Yeah,
We can
tools.
sort of later, but let's start posting any tools that we can, assessments or, I don't know, it's a little outside of stories, although stories are a tool too.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things. John, you were telling me about something, weren't you, on ethics or not? Or was that a tool? Yeah, a tool. Ethical lens. So, I mean, if we know...
We all have the same kind of ideas.
Yeah, if we know about those tools, then we can investigate and see if they're appropriate. So I think another idea would be to have a place where we can put tools down so that we can all take advantage of
We'll
those.
talk to Ashley about all these, how do you make this real?
There is a movement, somebody may know this, in the education MIG to post syllabi. So that's where we could work. To post the syllabi in leadership, but specifically, and we're talking about the leadership, the ethics syllabi.
I think another thing that I picked out of this was maybe we want to have a keynote speaker that talks about ethics. Whether it's IOE theme or whatever theme we think of, I think we ought to look for somebody that could be a keynote speaker on ethics.
And I'll be happy to put that forward, or Diane could put that forward, but they're going to say who. I mean, it won't just be...
And like maybe people would do that, that's useful too.
Yes, I'd love for
Because
somebody
if somebody's speaking on that, because then if you find out if you're familiar with South African context and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the idea of forgiveness and how that commission is formed, the idea of truth and just how that changes.
Jonathan Jansen is the name that comes to mind. The first black African head of all-white South African university has a marvelous story. He came out with a new book called something to the effect of Memory in the Blood. and how apartheid affected students who never directly experienced apartheid because they were born after, and yet they were still so profoundly affected by that program.
I got like 2 minutes left, so I think funnel your ideas to Jan on keynote speakers.
I'm on the web,
or to
on
Tom.
the ILA's, not ILA space, I'm on there too, but I'm actually on the internet, ILA-net.org.
I have another idea, but I'll talk to you.
Just
And then
I
I think
development, Nick.
I think I've captured everything, except for the links to research, and I think that's something else that ought to go on our space. I thought that was a good idea. I think I've captured most of the major ideas from where we go from here. Is there anything I missed? Anybody like to bring up before?
I'd like to say one other thing. You asked for people to make a commitment. I'd like people here to make a commitment. If you're not already on ILA space, go get on it. And then each person in this room, if you would get one other person here at the conference to go sign up for ILA space, just one person. That's all. Then 25 turns into 50. And maybe ask that person to get somebody to do it too. And while they're there, come look at the Ethics Forum learning community.
And I think we also in our group talked about collaborating to put together a proposal on ethics next year. And I think if each one of your little groups, if you have enough energy and passion about that subject, maybe you ought to talk among each other. So we got each other's email addresses. And figure out what you want to do next year in London. Neil?
One of the themes, there were a couple of common themes among all four groups. One of them that Nadine talked about was how to deliver the education, how to deliver ethics in an educational format, which could help us. What we had talked about was how do we get what you know about education into the community, into the organization. So I don't know if it's happening, but make sure you coordinate among all four groups because they're common ideas and we can help each other. She may be able to help us with ours, and we can help him with his.
It's all really one space.
Yeah,
It'll just be discussion
Okay.
threads that are separate. So you're not
One
limited to
community.
your group. Yeah, there's no limit to your group. You just picked as far as focusing today.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap. Jan, can we let's close it out?
I will be happy to support any of you. I had to read a whole bunch of proposals this time in order to choose the ones that were accepted, so I'm through them. I understand what leadership development is looking for in proposals. So if your groups want any triads or dyads or whatever come together and say, hey, let's do this, run it past me. I'll be happy to look at it and shape it to the best of my ability. I will not be reviewing next year. So all I'm going to do is give you the benefit of my experience. I'm not guaranteeing you acceptance or any of that kind of thing, but I certainly know what we look for. So, what we don't accept is papers. LD doesn't do papers. Scholarship, education, other people do papers. We would rather have more interaction, kinds of things like this, more discussions and practical kind of things. So that would be one of the things to keep in mind. But we really appreciate you coming. We really do want to gather these things. I think just starting to gather stories and tools and research and links, and that's a really great place. And then we can look for programs and speakers to continue to help shape. I think that would be fabulous. So thank you, everyone.
And everybody fill out 3x5 cards?
Yeah, and then we're going to also have not only your group emails, but our group email as a whole.